Doña Beatriz, thank you very much for your very kind introduction. And thank you for inviting me to this panel. I must say I have enjoyed your comments, Don Jorge. You, from a very privileged position as foreign minister of your country, have given us a good perspective of Henry Kissinger's role as Secretary of State. And I have to say, Ambassador Naudi Don Luigi, muy querido señor, I have absolutely enjoyed your personal perspectives and experiences with Secretary Kissinger. I would like to focus, if I may, on what I would call the future thinking of Kissinger, or the Kissinger of the future. But before I get there, I would have to say that I can think of no other person that has impacted geopolitics in the last 50 years as Henry Kissinger has done so. As a national security advisor, as the Secretary of State, from many different platforms, his voice was heard, respected by some, not by others, and his Kissinger doctrine, or realpolitik, was, I would say, put into action in all corners of the world. Don Jorge has spoken about that approach in Latin America, but one can see Henry Kissinger's imprint on Europe, on the Middle East, very especially, in Africa, in the Soviet Union, China, and of course, Asia. That has led people around the world, scholars, to praise Henry Kissinger, many, and to criticize him by some others. But the Henry Kissinger of the future is the Henry Kissinger statesperson, who is now sharing his perspectives on the challenges that he sees are most pressing in the world of today. And the world of today, friends, is characterized by the following elements. Number one, we are facing the greatest geopolitical tension that we have experienced ever since the wall came down in Europe. That does not bode well for, secondly, a global economy that is not running smoothly today, and that certainly should, in terms of being able to satisfying the needs and improve the livelihoods of millions of people around the world who deserve to live a better world. Thirdly, we are facing a planetary crisis with respect to climate change and the health of the ocean, the most important ecosystem in our life. And that fight to transform our economy into a low-carbon economy, a global low-carbon economy, of course, requires cooperation and being able to work beyond the geopolitical tensions that we see today. In that world, Kissinger reminds me, at his 100th birthday, he reminds me of a saying my grandfather had, who lived to be much older than Kissinger. And Fafa, my grandfather, used to say, uno es joven mientras tenga más ilusiones que recuerdos. One is young as long as one has more illusions than remembrances. And of course, in Henry Kissinger's thoughts with respect to the future, one sees many illusions of how this world could work much better, creating a healthier and better livelihood for peoples around the world. Jorge has mentioned some of these. I will tackle them from perhaps a different perspective. Number one, Kissinger has shared generously with us in the last years, and especially very recently, his preoccupation with respect to the tremendous confrontation within the United States and the way this affects the role of the United States in the world. Certainly, there has been confrontation between the two major political parties in the US for many decades. But he points out, and with good reason, that at no other point in history has that confrontation been as bitter and as deep as it is today. And furthermore, he points out that he does not see the leadership on either side within the US to be able to walk across the aisle and find opportunities on which to work together and create a much better United States. Secondly, he is not only worried about the confrontation between China and the US, a relation which, of course, he was pivotal in starting, as has been pointed out here. But interestingly, he is concerned with the way that AI, artificial intelligence, could even create much more of a confrontation between China and the US. In other words, in a tense situation already, a tense relation, how AI, artificial intelligence, could put that tense situation on steroids, so to say, and deepen the rift between both countries. And he goes into how in the future, in the near future, machines could impose global pandemics, for example, which would require the major powers to work together. And he points out to have effective and responsible leadership that is committed to working together. His most recent book on China is an extraordinary recount, not only of Chinese history, but of the China of the last 50 or 60 years, the role it has played in the world, and the role that he believes it will play into the future. And thirdly and lastly, I would point out his perspectives with respect to the conflict in Europe, Ukraine and Russia. Interestingly enough, contrary to what Europe is holding as a position today, and what many scholars believe should be the case, he argues for Ukraine becoming a part of NATO. And he puts out very sensible arguments on why this is the best, why Ukraine should not be left out in the open as a country that is not better aligned with Europe, because of the fact that it would pose more of a risk for Europe than if it was part of NATO, and so to speak, could be not contained, but could then be invited to abide by NATO's rules. And he therefore also argues why that is the best case for Russia as well. A very interesting perspective, which is counter to what many scholars and statesmen are thinking about today. These three elements, amongst others that I point out, reflect a Henry Kissinger that at the tender age of 100 years has more illusions than remembrances, although his remembrances are vast, as he has picked up and reported in his books. And I want to celebrate that in Henry Kissinger, that at this birthday and towards the future, he continues to be the global statesman that he is, respected and praised by many, criticized by others, but always concerned with global issues and how we can make this planet a better home for humankind. Thank you, Beatriz.